about school law. I'm not going to bore you with that. The educators particularly know that. But I do want to talk a little bit about Section 504 because there have been some changes, amendments that came out in 2012. These are the main three laws that you should be aware of. Actually, child find is important. Our school system doesn't always identify kids because they want to wait and don't want to label them. But technically with child find, they must do that. They must find them and help them. And requires that children with disabilities be educated to the maximum extent possible with all students. All right, I misunderstood. I thought RTI was a federal mandate, but it's not. But in case you don't understand RTI, what that's trying to do is give early intervention before you have to go through the extensive month to 3 months of testing. And so the sooner we help them, the better, and maybe RTI is all you need. These are the special education eligibility requirements. As I told you, at my school, they only tested this child under this one category. And you have to have a discrepancy. They did not look at other health impairment, which is what 15 years ago, 10 years ago, the Office of Special Education recommended our children fall under their, I love these memos from the director's office. I get copies of them, so I know. And what I find is that I sometimes know before it's disseminated to the trenches. Sometimes emotional disturbance, I prefer to stay away from that because our kids are more emotional anyway. And labeling them that is not necessarily going to be of help. And it may, in fact, put them in with children who are teaching them behaviors they'd rather not learn. They've also added some things under 504 that are considered substantially limiting or a disabled person: learning, behavior, reading, speaking, concentrating, thinking, communicating. And this was as of 2009. And then in January of 2012, they issued a policy memorandum from OSEP, Office of Special Education, because Congress felt like people weren't doing enough to help people with Section 504. And so here's what they said. Congress stated the definition of the disability should be construed in favor of broad coverage of individuals to the maximum extent permitted by law. And you must consider the child's eligibility without considering the mitigating measures that are helping him be successful. And these are some of those mitigating measures. Usually medication is not so much an issue, but sometimes they say, well, your child's doing better, so we're going to take them out. Well, that ought not be happening because, or if they're getting reasonable accommodations, or their assistive technology, or their learning behavioral or adaptive neurological supports. And here are a few other key points. A child doesn't have to be failing to be eligible for an IEP. And a child with a high IQ, I think we know at least like 2 in 6 children who are gifted have disabilities. So they can have dual eligibility. A child should not be penalized when seeking a 504 because of the extra supports provided at home by parents. Oh man, when Alex graduated from high school, I would walk around going, we graduated from high school, because I was with him every night at the table helping him. But we were so ignorant back then. We knew so little, and now we know so much more. And that's why Ann and I and my husband Tommy were so passionate about educating you about these sorts of things so you would understand. And a child with an IEP or a 504 should never be failing. If they are, something's wrong. You need to revise the plan. And students who were denied eligibility in the past may be eligible now. And I developed a summary of that document if you email me, but you got to tell me what you want. And I've been a former lobbyist, and I worked in actually written legislation, and so I quote verbatim what some of the statutes say or the regs say. Regulations carry the same impact as the law itself and are very important. These are just some typical possible accommodations. I'm not going to go into a lot of those. There were some that were issued many years ago, but in general, these kinds of things, extended time, shortened assignments, whatever. The need for continued advocacy. Many children, many of our children, is the way I refer to them, continue to be denied access. But I'm so happy to say that in my county that is starting to change. And I was reading the paper one day and I found out that there's a little local grant company in our area. I say little local grant, $500,000 foundation nationally. The inventor created latex gloves. He has plants all over the country. Well, his little plant, shoot, Chris, quit saying little. His plant, one of his plants is located in the county next to mine. People from Georgia and Alabama both work there. We wrote a $10,000 grant and sent 11 teachers to our regional ADHD conference. One teacher came back and said, "This is the best conference," veteran, "best conference I've been to in 20 years. And another woman who was a teacher, we tried to get teachers who were also parents, said, "Oh, I realize I've been doing so many things I need to change." And she said, "Now I better understand my child and I know how to help him better. I will be a more effective teacher and a more effective parent." Myths and ignorance about ADHD continue. You know, someone said to me, "Teachers don't want training on ADHD," and here's why I think why. 15 years ago they had one training. They don't realize all this fascinating new brain research that's out there. They don't recognize the executive function issues that are, you know, if you ask me why my son struggled most in school, it wasn't the ADHD. It was the executive function deficits that I was totally clueless about. And I blamed him not getting started, not finishing. And I realized that one of the slides I meant to put in that somehow didn't, and I'm just gonna, this is out of sequence. But recently, Russell Barkley reported in his most recent book that we know that over half of our children have sleep issues. We have learned that they have a delayed sleep cycle. Did I tell you this earlier? All right, maybe in another class or something. Delayed sleep cycle, which means that our little sweethearts that we want to go to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock can't fall asleep because of their different delayed cycle. Till Alex would be up till 1 or 2 o'clock and I just wanted to kill him. And then they discovered that they have an elevated circadian rhythm gene. So what I'm finding so often is everything our kids do that is strange to us, there's often a chemical reason. And so what happens, that controls wake and sleep cycle. They also, obstructive breathing is an issue. My son, as a young adult, had a breathing study. His uvula was hanging down in his throat and blocking his breathing. And he was having 48 near awakenings every night. Well, here's the deal. If you don't get deep into REM cycle, you cannot consolidate what you learned at school into your memory. Sleep is critical. That's why teachers have to ask about sleep. How is your child sleeping? Because if he is not sleeping well, then he is not going to be able to remember what he learned. Our kids wake up tired. You know, the experts say high school students need more sleep and school really should be delayed. But we always send the high school kids first and then the other kids. So that was just a little extra thrown in that I thought I had in here. So that is, and I'm just zipping right along with my prednisone. What can I say?
Good girl.
Thank you.